Once again, this is the third session of the Emergency Services Workshop. I'm Lieutenant Colonel Ed Voss, joined by Major Mike Zavatakis. No, he already said hi. And Major Frank DeBrose.
Oh, sorry. Hello.
What's up, guys?
So this evening, we're going to go over event training plans. So we started with an overview about training last week, and we're going to get into actual event planning this week because a lot of people seem to have questions about that. So we're going to do a fair amount of detail. We're also going to talk about process improvement, and as an ES officer, how are you going to do process improvement as a program manager? And then we're going to talk about ES awards because as the ES officer, that's your wheelhouse. You're responsible for making sure those awards happen and supporting the personnel shop and making that work. And then whatever time we have left at the end, we will do a roundtable discussion, and we will try to make sure that we can answer all of your questions before we all depart and end the workshop. So as we get started, are there any questions that we have that we want to bring up and answer real quick and then dig into the material? Anyone? Or do we want to save them for later? Hearing nothing, we'll save them for later. So event training plans. So, and Z, this is probably a good spot for those thoughts that you shared earlier with me, talking about types of events.
So I was just making some notes to make sure we covered things. Basically, there are three types of training events. You have task-based training, of which are very focused on someone getting like ground team level 3, and they have to do their task training on navigation. That's an individual sign-off on finding a beacon with an ELPR. So they're very, very focused on individual tasks as related to a specific qualification. Then you have sortie-based training. This is where you bring people together who have, at a minimum, their FMP done, so they're sortie capable by regulation. Then as a team, they go out and execute a sortie. So as a team, they go and find a beacon that could be placed anywhere in the state. Or as a team, they go and they prosecute a missing persons mission of sortie, hasty searches of a park or something like that. Then the third and final is like a scenario-based event. Typically, you see these at the wing level, where the wing sends out, announcement, hey, we're going to have a SARX, and they have a scenario. A missing aircraft scenario is very common, and all of the squadrons send ground teams, send air crews, send incident staff personnel to prosecute the scenario. Someone would be a trusted agent and would give injects, and then the management team, the incident command team, would have to then figure out where to send ground teams, where to send aircraft, where to set up communication networks. So those are your three basic or fundamental types of training events. Does everybody kind of follow me with what I'm saying there?
Yep.
So this is where earlier, I believe week 1, having goals lined up from squadron to group to wing to region to national. So if you know what your wing's goals are, then one of the wing goals may be we need to increase the number of ground team members or mission observers or airborne photographers. So as a squadron, you set up some task training. We need to get ground team member level 3s. We need to get airborne photographers. You set up your task training to get people their individual qualification. Then you look further at the road of, hey, can we do a sortie? So a squadron can do a sortie on their own. There's no need to have a major event to set up a single sortie. Some member of the squadron or a neighboring squadron may have a practice beacon. They set it out. You pull together a ground team and you go out and you prosecute that beacon. And then finally, and this typically is the wing level event, when you have the full-blown scenario-based exercise, that's where then you have developed the airborne photographers, the mission observers, the ground team members to support the wings needs in the ES mission. So that's, geez, in 5 minutes, the big, how that, the structure of how that works. I see he's got here, you have your single ES lesson unit meeting. This could be a task type training, your single day and even evaluation events. So this is where people, they learn about something, they study their task guides, then they go to this single day training where there's skills evaluators present, that they can actually get the sign off done. It's in e-services, and they can get their rating. Overnight bivouacs, this is a big thing for ground teams. There's actually one of the sign-offs is to actually build a shelter. We'd like to do the shelter building, and then to make sure people build a good enough shelter, make them sleep in it. Multi-weekend and training series. Most SARXs at the wing level are multi-day, a lot of times Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So that is very common. Wing multi-qualification. So this would be, I'm going to go with something, a national level event like NISA, where people from all over the country can come, and they have, they cover all of the tasks for actually every ES rating that there is, from ground team to mission staff to air crew, SUAS, the whole gamut. Some wings do academies like that. Maryland is actually starting for the first time, or at least planning together right now for in the fall, late summer, fall, to do a Maryland Emergency Services Academy, starting small and working their way up. And then region level events. So in Mideast region, when they can get the training area, a lot of times Fort Pickett in Virginia, they'll have many of the wings from the Mid-Atlantic region will come together and have a region-wide training exercise or training academy.
All these are within our purview as ES officers. Typically, we're going to do the less complex things. Whoever's taking control, stop it.
My bad. That's me. I'm sorry. I didn't realize it was showing it for everybody.
So as I was saying, at the unit level, you're typically doing those less complex, single topic discussion training at a meeting. We don't do evaluation at meetings typically, or a single day event where you're doing training evaluation or a weekend long thing. These more complex things are typically done at group or wing level. And so we have planning materials that we put up on the website for people to take a look at. And let's see how easy it is to share these. We have the schedule, the training plan, and the budget. And if you're going to do high quality training, it might behoove you to take a look at putting together several different documents to help keep your training organized, especially as you get more complex. So this example is for a multi-weekend training series to get people through Ground Team Member 3 and UDF. And so you can look, and there's a 5-weekend series, weekends 1 through 5, starting on Friday, ending on Sunday, broken up by different slideshow presentations like natural hazards, different practical exercises like station-based training where you're doing your gear check, your ICS training, and hot and cold weather injury training. And all of these are have supporting tasks that show you what it is you're working on, what it is you're working towards. And an important tip that I learned from working at NISA is fill the whole day. Don't have training go from 9 to 5 and then not have anything to do from 5 o'clock until people go to bed, because that's how we get in trouble. That's how bad things happen and IG complaints get started. So if you look on this schedule, the example was movie night or a night navigation exercise. and we actually use that full training day and that full opportunity. Also part of the spreadsheet that's on the website is a blank schedule, so you can try to build your own and see what that looks like. If you're going to do training at your local unit and you want to plan one weekend, notice I can't fit an entire qualification in one weekend. You can't get a bunch of people through ground team member 3 in one weekend. If you try to, you're not doing good training, and you're probably skipping some of the important evaluation steps. So keep that in mind. And this is something that CAP, to my knowledge, hasn't done a very good job of showing people how to do. This is a skill I worked up working for other nonprofits. I picked up working for other nonprofits, and it's budgeting for the event. So we have our Air Force appropriated funds that we can use to pay for vehicle fuel on Air Force assigned missions. There are a few other expenses that can be authorized. But if you want to do good training and you need training supplies, if you need admin supplies, if you need to do a bunch of printing for supporting documentation, you have to put together a non-appropriated budget and have income for that. And so this is an example. If we have a 5-weekend series and we charge students $80, which is a pretty good deal for, you know, let's say 10 days worth of activity, charge staff a little bit of money as well, and cover the other fees that another agency is going to charge us, like Red Cross training was included in the schedule. So we have all this income, we have it put against expenses, and we can work it out to make sure that we're not losing anything. A couple things to point out on this. When you plan an event, it's probably a good idea to plan for a contingency and plan to have that little bit of extra money. So this is 15% of all your other expenses, in case you had to buy more food last minute, in case something was more expensive than you thought, in case you had to replace a radio that got lost during the training, something like that. So you have a little bit of contingency built in. And you plan for different levels. So you plan for attendance if it's low and attendance if it's high. And that helps you because you can look at your fixed costs. I got to buy a pack of pens no matter how many students I have. That is a fixed cost, right? 1 box of pens is $10 or whatever it is. So that cost doesn't change, but other costs like food will. And so you can plan for whether or not you're going to have a lot of people. And you're going to have this budget, and then you're going to put in what your actual is and submit that. And all this gets approved by your finance committee. And on this spreadsheet, I also have it so that you can put in the actual details, how much postage, what you bought for your canteen. If you're not familiar with a canteen, that is an opportunity to kind of pad the budget a little bit and make a little more money. So we have those movie nights on the schedule. If you sell your participants granola bars and soda for, you know, a couple of bucks, you can actually cover some of your budget and offset the cost for the attendance fee. You can sell t-shirts, patches, other collectibles, buy them from Vanguard, add a couple of bucks, include shipping, and help pad your budget that way, help cover the expenses. So are there any questions about the schedule or about the budget before we move on? I must have done an amazing job explaining these.
So it's not a question, but it's
Yeah.
something we brought up last week in the planning an event, and I think it doesn't. I think in CAP sometimes we fail a little bit at that we feel like we have to accomplish something. And this is going to your comment about training, you know, a ground team member level 3 in a weekend. I think sometimes we get into the trap that we feel like we have to get these sign-offs so that we feel like we've done something for the weekend, right? And it's, I think as ES officers, it's important for us to remember and to emphasize to our people that the training is what matters, right? Whether you get whether you get 1 task signed off this weekend or you get 5 tasks signed off, like the training is still valuable. And you know that you spend a weekend, you might not get any tasks signed off. You might get 5 of them next weekend because of the stuff you did this weekend. I think we should, just always remember, don't get ahead of yourself in trying to check boxes and focus more on getting quality training. I think that's, as ES officers, that's a big part of our job, that we're the sort of the gatekeepers of that and making sure that that's happening the way that it should be happening, and not whatever term pencil whipping or whatever term you want to use, and especially when we start doing this online stuff, which I'm glad that NISA has done it the way that they're doing it. But a lot of these practical tasks, you can't just train it and get signed off for completing it. There's a lot that goes into demonstrating that it's complete. So sorry, I'm getting a little long-winded, but I feel like I always need to emphasize that. That's something that comes up a lot, at least in my experience doing the CS stuff.
Thanks. All right, so that was those two documents. So now we're going to go to the logistics schedule, if it comes up.
Hey, that looks familiar.
Yeah, right. There, it was hidden on my desktop here. So, can everybody see it?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yes,
That's
sir.
better.
So I was being a like bee, and I thought I would have this entire 5-weekend series, including training plan and logistics schedule and everything else done. It didn't happen for a number of reasons, but I did get the first weekend's training plan done, and you can use that as a template for those other weekends. And the important things to take note of in this training plan. So you have the schedule of events. The training plan is very important to include because it spells out what resources get put against those events. And so for staff arrival, why are we doing it? Well, you got to get your gear put away and get ready for your students to come. So who's in charge? What are people going to do? Where's it going to happen? What do you need to do it? All of that stuff is very good to spell out so that your ground team leaders who are also instructors, and your support staff, and your logistics person, and your comm person, so everybody knows what's going on. So in this example, the ES training officer is kind of, I imagine that this was a squadron event and that your squadron's ES training officer was the person who was in charge of it. Instructors are people who are already qualified, who are giving instruction and can also help with evaluation. Support staff are other squadron members or people from other squadrons who are coming to attend that are not instructors, that are helping with logistics, helping with admin, things like that. It talks about what documents you need, what people need to bring. It spells it out in a fair level of detail. Does anybody have any questions about this?
If you could just back up a little bit or scroll back up, hold it right there.
Yep.
So you can see, and actually down a little bit, in the logistics part, you see that it even lists out, what forms do you need? Do you need a projector? Do you need an extension cord? Do you need a laptop? This is where all of that detail is, so that you may have staff members from many different squadrons supporting this event, and you can share this with them, and they can say, okay, I can see exactly what my job is. My job is to get that extension cord, get that laptop, and have it in the classroom at this time of day. So this is where that is spelled out in that detail.
And I already see a mistake. Forgive me. This says CAP Form 211. It should be ICS 211, but I just want to prove that I'm not perfect, I guess. All right. So yeah, NISA has been using this format for several years, or while I was there. I don't know if it's changed since.
Yeah.
But it even includes so for that leadership movie night, that first Saturday, here's some training that we can leadership training that we can work on for that movie night. And so here's some question prompts and questions that I took off the internet to lead a discussion having to do with the movie, so that we feel like it's not just a waste of time movie night, even though it's fun. It's actually worthwhile training. And another consideration, let me stop sharing this, is what does leadership training have to do with ES? Well, ES is actually one of the best leadership laboratories in Civil Air Patrol. And if you look at it that way, any opportunity to talk about leadership in that environment is probably a good opportunity. And now we go back to where we left off. All right. So we looked at the schedule, the training plan, and the budget. Oh, there is one more document. I apologize. Here is an exercise inject document. Can we see that?
Yes, if you could blow it up a little bit. That's perfect.
Okay.
Perfect.
So this is the format that the Air Force uses when they do our evaluations, when they do their operations evaluations. And so this is the Petticoat Junction exercise. This is Inject 1.1. And this is what your controller, and we'll talk about what a controller is, would use to keep track of how the exercise is going and when they need to give more information and clues and things like that. So this Inject is a PIREP, for those who aren't familiar, that's pilot report, indicating a signal in vicinity of, here are coordinates, to give to the team leaders, saying that the ground branch director wants teams to coordinate, locate, and find the location of this, and locate the source of the signal. Sorry, spelled it wrong. It was probably late when I was working on this. What the exercise controller expects to see: teams communicating, plotting the information, and doing a rapid search of that triangulated location. Notes if there are any questions about the inject from the people that you're giving it to. Expected outcome, that they locate the practice beacon and use their radios efficiently. And this is for that first scenario-based sortie where they're doing triangulation and exercising on comms. And so all those things are what we want to look at. Okay. I hate that I can't just go back to the PowerPoint Direct. There's probably a way to do it, and I just don't know it yet. Other things you want to think about. So we have those documents up on the website for you to see. Think about how you want people to apply to attend. Is it just an email? Do you want a CAP Form 17? What is it you want? Operations planning. And so how are you going to get those plans to staff and to students? An operations plan is that 6-paragraph situation. Frank, do you remember it off the top of your head, or 5-paragraph?
Yeah, situation, mission, execution, communications, and sustainment and control. There we go.
Right. So
paragraph.
Five paragraphs.
Yeah, 5.
And that's in the task guide. That's in the ground team task guide if anyone wants a reference. But that is more appropriate than the schedule or training plan for telling people when to show up for an exercise and what to bring and stuff like that. So consider that as well as an option. All right. So we talked about how an ES officer or an ES training officer, that's what these office symbols are, is in charge of planning. That's part of our job as ES officers. The commander or the incident commander, depending on the type of activity is, they're in charge of execution, right? So if you plan an event, you're asking your commander if you can do it. You're getting permission from him and from the finance committee for the budget and for everything else. The commander is ultimately in charge. You're just doing your staff work, right? But the control cell, that's a different thing, right? When you're doing training evolutions, when you're doing scenarios, they're the ones who are overseeing that. They're providing those clues and those injects, and they are separate from the rest of the staff because this is their job. It adds realism to the training, which is an important and valuable aspect that we want to make sure we're honoring. It adds a formal observation and feedback process that's outside of the people that are in the moment doing the training. All the students, all the instructors, all the evaluators, they're in the moment, they're in the thick of it. And if you have an extra control cell, you have extra observers that are observing how that training is going. Now, CAP doesn't have a training process that I found for a control cell. Some wings, some units, some national activities use this and use it to great effect. Other trainings that you could look at to build these skills, Improv, the ability to roll with new information, might be a good skill. Honest to goodness, this sounds really weird and maybe a little bit strange to you, but Dungeon Master, right? That game mastering, masterminding, knowing how everything is supposed to unfold and making sure you shape the events to go that way might be a good thing to do. And FEMA does have exercise planning courses that you can take.
And if you've got military folks, which a lot of us do in your formations, that's a, exercise control, OCTs. It's a thing that a lot in the military. If you haven't done it, you've had experience with it. So that's those are good folks to ask. I say that because it's my job. So.
Right. You know what's up. So tie-ins with other directorates. And so I bring this up because we're planning these events, but we're not all alone. It's not all on us. We have support, right? So your command team, your unit commanders, deputy commanders, you can ask them for guidance and approval, all right? Or, ideas, because they may have been there before and know what works. Your admin folks in your unit can process applications, can deal with in-processing at the event, can do the follow-up with the participation letters or certificates or whatever happens after that. Your finance people, they're going to approve the costs for printing, for location, for supply, that whole budget that you put together. Cadet programs folks can help you get the word out to cadets that might want to participate. Your cadet emergency services officer might be available to help plan how to engage cadets and what other kind of supportive activities that they need to see, and providing additional support. Your public affairs person can help put the word out to other units and maybe to the community, letting them know, hey, Civil Air Patrol's doing this cool thing. Safety can help you with safety. Health services can help you with first aid planning, medical planning. So it's not all on you. We do have a whole bureaucracy, a whole team dedicated to making stuff happen, and you can lean on these other folks. All right, now we're getting into process improvement. Take it away, Frank.
Yep. So, all right. I guess.
You want to control it?
What's that?
You want to control it?
Yeah, sure. I guess I can.
Okay.
Kind of neat. It's thinking, I think. Anyway, so everything we do. So last week, or the week before, I think it was last week, Colonel Boss had one of the slides there at some old German guy quote, basically saying that no plan survives first contact with the enemy, right? So we can come up with these plans. The plan that he showed, the training plan that he showed, someone made those for NISA. One second. Sorry, minions. Okay, so as Colonel Boss was saying, no plan survives first contact with the enemy, right? So that the plan that he showed, the template that he showed, that's someone planned that probably in a vacuum. Maybe they've been to NISA and they thought, this is what the training should look like. And Ed, if you want to take control back, because it doesn't seem to be cooperating with me. But yeah, so he, person made that plan in a vacuum, goes and executes it at NISA, and maybe it works and maybe it doesn't. You think, you as the person who's planning it, think what needs to happen and how it needs to happen, and then you come to find out that maybe some part of it takes a lot longer than you thought, maybe some part doesn't. Things are more expensive, the usual stuff that you run into. So it's always beneficial to us to seek to improve what we're doing and improve our plans and try to better ourselves. Like the slide says, it'll make the job easier. If you overcomplicate the plan and you realize, hey, there's a way simpler way that we can do this, instead of having 15 vans, we could just do it with one or something, whatever. Accomplish a mission more effectively, use fewer resources. That's usually the big one. And time is the one, right? We're always short on time. We're always trying to find a way to do it more efficiently. Money is also a thing that we worry about, but time is probably the big one. And then operationalizes the core values that we want to, maybe we realize that we missed. We're not all perfect. Sometimes our plan doesn't go the way that we think that it or the way that it should, and we want to find ways to correct deficiencies that we find. The way that we do that, and CAP doesn't really have an official decision loop. The OODA loop is one you may have heard of. The CAP doesn't have an official one. So what we've put here in the slides is the Deming cycle, which is plan, do, check, and act. And I think Ed has the next slide. He's got a quick 1-minute video that's going to tell us a little bit about it, and then we will get back to talking.
So I try to give a quick example while you're getting back there.
Yeah.
So, there are a lot of map task sign-offs for GTM2, and so there's an entire map day, as we call it, at NISA that goes through all of those tasks and all of the mapping tasks that are related to that rating. And we found after doing this course a couple times that we were getting way too in depth in some of the technical features of mapping, that the students were zoning out. They were not learning. So we, for lack of a better term, dumbed it down. We removed some of the more in-depth technical pieces of the training and found that the students were much more engaged and were retaining the information better.
And then furthermore, we created training documents, training maps, and training quizzes that really just kind of let us zip right through the tasks in a way that met the criteria in the task guide, so we could evaluate them quickly and effectively without spending, I mean, it was days doing the map class. And now it's really been refined. So that's a great example, sir.
Yeah, that is actually, I mean, me and Colonel Boss and Major Zavatakis, I think we're all part of that when that happened. And that was a huge improvement in that whole process. So as they were saying in the video, there's 4 parts to the loop. So the first part is plan. So like I said before, sometimes you plan and you've done it before, but a lot of times you're making a plan for something you haven't done before. And that's, you are making your best guess essentially. And that's where we talk about that no plan survives first contact with the enemy, because you have your assumptions and things that you expect are going to happen, and then someone else is going to make some decisions that is going to cause other things to happen. So whether that's an annual plan, a SARX plan, awards plan, the training plan for NISA, you do the best that you can when you're not there, and you come up with an idea, and then you do it, right? So you execute the plan. You run through a year of NISA, and 1 week at a time, but you run through a week of NISA, and you follow the plan to the best of your abilities. But you have someone, while you're doing it, either yourself, depending on, if you're the training officer for NISA, like that's what you're doing. You're watching what's going on and you're taking notes, gathering the data, and I apologize for continually jumping back to NISA, but I think it's probably the best, consolidated lab for this. I mean, we have, a whole bunch of us have been there a few years and seen it change over time or been part of the changes. But we track, what percentage are tasks completed every day. It's a discussion that we have at the end of the day. Like, hey, these here are all the tasks we were supposed to do today. Here's how many people have gotten signed off. Here's how many haven't. Here's the issues. All the FTAs and the cadet trainers will come back and be like, hey, everyone's struggling on this one thing, or this part of it took forever. The map task. One of the things is you got to find terrain features, and people have to identify, what's a depression, what's a hill, what's a saddle. And every year we would go back and look at the map of NISA and be like, where is that one depression on the entire map of, on the Nineveh Topo Quad? There's one little tiny one, and we have to find it every year. So, instead we come up with, hey, let's have this prepackaged so the new person doesn't have to go find it every year. And anything quantifiable. So, like I said, like percentage of completion, any issues that people have, any places where people come up with ideas. It's open forum basically, where your staff is going to discuss everything that they saw and ways that they think, where they had problems and where they think they could improve. And then next slide.
Earl Paquin had a question.
Nope. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Was it in text? Let me.
Sorry, couldn't unmute.
What's up, sir?
Am I coming through now?
Yeah.
Okay, could you take a quick moment and discuss the difference between qualification and competence as it relates to the training we're doing?
Yeah. So the qualification is the paper. If you've completed, if you're SET, whatever, you're qualified to be an evaluator. If you've got the sign off in e-services, you're qualified to be a Ground Team 3 member. Doesn't necessarily make you competent as an experienced person who's done it often and who is comfortable with the content. And I mean, you could be competent and not be qualified. You could be a GIS guy. Like maps could be your day job. That's what you do for a living. And then you come to CAP and you know everything there is to know about maps, but you haven't got the CAP qualification in CAP. It's important. It's important to keep track of who your competent versus qualified people are. There's a lot of people that, and like I was saying, you check boxes. It doesn't necessarily make you an expert. It just means that you've completed the training.
I think one other thing worth noting is competence is an arc, right? You're just starting out in a field or with a subject or whatever, you're not competent, and then you get competent. And then you get complacent and you hit that backslide where, you used to be good at it, very good at it, but you haven't practiced, haven't kept up. And so that competence can diminish. And how fast that is depends on how complacent you are.
So just in general, what I was speaking to is that I've seen a trend in CAP where we're trying to make competent people in 3 weekends, but that's going to take years most times. So when you're doing your training plan, you want to make sure that you're getting people to the qualification level, and then we can work on competency at a later time.
So one thing to remember is, I have this in my professional life as well as CAP. When you get any rating in CAP, that is a minimum standard that you're meeting. This is the lowest level standard that you are achieving to become a ground team member, to become a mission observer, to become a mission pilot. One of the issues that I have run into very frequently in CAP is everybody thinks, okay, I did these tasks to be GTM3 and I got that box checked. I'm now the greatest ground team member person that ever walked the face of the earth. No, you are the most minimally qualified person who ever walked the face of this earth. So training is constant. I do ground team training and map work and staff work constantly. I do it with different organizations outside of CAP and within CAP. Just to get that different experience and how different agencies do it versus how CAP does things. So getting a qualification means, okay, I've met the minimum threshold to be a ground team member, to be a mission observer, to be a mission pilot, to be an incident commander. But you should always stress, this is a big piece of the ES officer's job, always stress that to people and then show them that there is further training to do. Okay, but you take a map class and you're in do those map tasks, in that day. Does that make you an expert on maps? Absolutely not. Half of it you'll probably forget before 2 days from then. So it's a constant training, and just always remember that once you've done the task for a specific achievement, now you have just scratched the surface. Now you're ready to really dive in, get that experience, keep working on that ground branch director, that ground team member, that whatever rating it is, to become much more competent in that job.
Great discussion.
Okay, so we've done the plan, we've done the do, and we've taken our notes and had our discussions. The next thing you'll do is you'll check. So you will evaluate the data compared to last year. And again, I'm beating the NISA drum, but I know that that's also something that Colonel Long will pull out. Hey, this time last year we were at this percentage, and this year we're at that percentage. So we're either ahead of schedule or we're behind schedule. And then we discuss, why that is, and how we can either get back on schedule or how we can take advantage of the extra time that we have if we're ahead of schedule. Then obviously you want to compare that to your desired results. When part of your training plan, you should have a, we call it a commander's objective, but there should be some sort of training objective, right? You want to have a measurable goal that you can say, did we make it or did we not make it? And it's for, on this given day, these are the 3 tasks we're going to complete. On this day, we're going to complete this 1 task. And then we can look back and say, did we do that or did we not do that? Overall, at the end of the training, the 5 weeks or, whether it's a week or however long it is, did the people who showed up get qualified as a GT3? That is the intent of these 5 week, which is basically breaking a NISA week into 5 monthly training weekends. The idea is you can show up with nothing, generally yes. And when you leave as theoretically, you have the potential to leave as a qualified GT3. Did that happen? At what rate did that happen? Was it 1 person out of 100 that passed, or was it everybody just got checked off after the first 2 weeks? And then you act, which we've, in other words, it's adjust. So that's, you take these notes and take this analysis, and then see where you can, what can we do to improve it? So, were there shortcomings? Did we find we had extra time? Can we build some more competence into, hey, everyone's qualified, but we've got extra time here that we can use to build some more competence by either doing extra training or training on different tasks, or bringing in an outside expert to talk about some part of it, and where are the opportunities that we can improve? How can we be more efficient with the time? The map one that Colonel Boss's example is fantastic, that we were wasting so much time preparing for the class because it's so intensive. The materials are so important. We would spend half the day just getting ready to evaluate the students, and then we had no time to evaluate the students. And so now there's a prepackaged, test with answer sheets and everything that one of the instructors made over several years and refined, just like here, just like we're talking about, refined it over time, that where you can email it to someone and they can give the land navigation class not anywhere near Indiana, because all the stuff is done and ready and the answers are there, and it's really quick to administer. Yeah. And then this, this graphic on the right here, it's basically the idea is that it's a constant, it's a constantly turning wheel. You start the process again, you make the plan for next year, and you start over and repeat. Okay, we get in the next slide here. So root cause investigation. So you want to find why is it, if you have a deficiency or you discover something, you want to find the root cause. So not the symptom might be one thing, that you don't have enough time, but the actual quote disease could be that it takes it's not that you don't have enough time to conduct this training, it's just that moving to the training area takes X amount of time, because we the example before, we have 1 van that's doing turns, and so it takes an hour to get 20 people out to the field versus having 4 vans, and we make it in 1 trip and we save 15 minutes. We always want to reevaluate risk. Risk is it's one of those, it can be a difficult discussion sometimes. We talk about safety first, and safety before everything else. And really, when we're talking about risk and risk management, it's more about risk to mission, right? So, and that's not to say that the safety of your personnel isn't important, but it's that it's a balance. So it's not just could someone get hurt doing this, but it's also, do we risk by doing X, Y, or Z? Do we risk not accomplishing our mission because we didn't do something? And then it's a balance of, what risk are we assuming by, going out in the rain in a, potentially bad weather, in cold weather, what could happen to us, and do the benefits of doing it outweigh the risks of going out, right? Someone could lose their life if we don't go. So maybe we'll take some extra risk if someone's life is in danger, versus if we know it's a non-distress mission, then maybe we will, we won't do things a certain way. And then at the end of the ACT phase, in theory, the process is better instructions, better standards, better goals. So you've done your refinement, and you kept what worked. You've in theory fixed what didn't work. You've economized anywhere that you could. You've used the time wisely. So like Colonel Boss was saying, if you've got half a day left over, you found a way to fill it, because that's bad things happen. That's a little bit of that risk discussion there. And then you avoid the issues that you've had in the past. If there's not a way, if you can't avoid the issues you've had in the past, then something fundamental has to change in the plan, because the plan's not effective. The action wasn't effective. If you're just changing it for the sake of change, then you're just making extra work for no reason. Any change that you make should lead to a better process over time. And I think that is what we got here. I'm sorry, I'm having to jump back and forth because my screen doesn't show. Okay. So scenario. So we have the annual SARCOM. We make a plan. We do the schedule, the budget, the staffing, the marketing, which is letting everyone know that it's happening. The admin folks that are always working in the background, and then we execute it. We execute the plan and we track. So Roses and Thorns, that I remember that from Boy Scouts. I don't know if anyone has heard of that out from any other forum. But Roses and Thorns is you go around a circle, and everyone can say something that a rose, something that went well, and then a thorn, which is something that didn't go well. It's hot wash and after action review in the military. You give, we call them ups and downs, but or a sustain and an improve, things that we want to keep doing, things that we want to change, and how can we change it. Obviously track the budget. That's a fundamental thing. Budgeting is not my world, but someone out there, Colonel Boss, I think that's his thing. But someone's watching that to make sure that you're not spending all your money in the first couple of days, or that you didn't charge everyone $500 and you really only need 10. Personnel, and then getting feedback is, and that's feedback from everybody, right? It's feedback from the leadership, from the people that are running the activity, from your instructors, and also from your students, right? Because you might think you've got the best class set up. We're teaching this fantastic map class, and all the students are like, man, my eyes are rolling into the back of my head. I don't care about why it's XYZ degrees on the globe. I just need to know that it's 360 degrees, and we can move on. We don't need to spend an hour on that, right? And then the check, formal, informal. So that's the after action review, the hot wash, whatever you want to call it. The informal we call a hot wash. The formal would be an after action review. But you should have some sort of discussion at the end, where you bring the key people in, and it's depending on the event that you're doing, maybe you can bring everybody, but sometimes you only want to bring certain subsets. And it's not for exclusion. It's just for expedient, or not expediency. The discussion will change. The character of the discussion will change depending on who you bring in. So if you bring in every single cadet, you're going to hear a lot of "it was hot" and "I needed water." And you're going to get some good responses too. If you bring in the leadership, the discussion will change, and then you might not hear that there wasn't enough water. So it's a balance. It's something you have to figure out what the appropriate audience is. And then ACT is set the new standard. The new improved standard is put it in place. The best time to do it is right after. The sooner you do it after the do phase, the better off you'll be, because it'll be fresh and you'll remember all of the things that you wanted to change and all the great ideas, because stuff's going to pop in your head and you want to get that documented and ready. Don't make the next plan the week before the event. Make it right after the last event, and you'll capture all of those great ideas and all the improvements that you could make to make a better activity. So. And I think, is that my last slide? I think that's my last slide. So Colonel Boss or Major Z, unless you've got anything to add to that, or if there's any questions. I haven't been able to look at the chat, so someone say something if there's anything going on.
Yeah, does anybody have any questions about the Deming cycle, PDCA?
I think they're asleep.
We are boring. All right, moving on.
No, I have no question.
That's good. All right, so ES Awards. And so here we are, we're doing all this stuff, we're getting all this help, we have all these people involved, and we need to pay them, right? Here comes the paycheck, ES Awards. So if you look in the CAP pamphlet 70-3, these are the categories of awards that ES officers need to be concerned with. And to be clear, these are not official CAP recognized categories of awards. This is just a convenient way of making each type of award distinct so we can talk about them as groups. So first is of the year awards. And so we have the Incident Staff Member of the Year, Ground Team of the Year, Counter Drug Officer of the Year, Operations Staff Officer of the Year, and Aircrew Member of the Year. So all those of the year awards recognize not just, it says of the year, and we recognize a person in a particular year. And we talk about what they did in a year when we nominate them, but we also talk about the rest of their CAP history and what they've contributed in that category. And so for the Colonel Dave Cantor Operations Staff Officer of the Year, we're going to talk about that Operations Staff Officer, what they did in, the year of 2020, but we're also going to talk about what they did before that and how much they contributed. And really, when we do those nominations, and for any of these, we want to give as much detail as we can with figures and numbers and facts and dates, because the more we can quantify and describe what they've done in concrete terms, the easier it is to justify the award. What we don't want to say is, man, I've known this guy for a good long time and he's pretty great, you should give him the award. Or, you could try that. Or you could say, Major DeBrose has been a qualified Master Aid Emergency Services Officer for 5 years, conducted 300 training days, training 2,000, cadets and senior members as ground team members for, over the course of 10 National ES Academy, whatevers. Those specific figures are really valuable when you're putting in people for awards. Ribbons and medals is that next category. And so the FIND ribbon is for finding an ELT or an EPIRB or PLB. It's for finding an emergency beacon. An air search and rescue ribbon is for finding someone or an actual crash site. So those are distinct awards. They are a little bit different. Counter drug ribbon is for counter drug sorties. Disaster relief is for disaster relief, Homeland Security. And a certificate for life saving is for a save. Now, it can be for other things, but as ES officers, what we're worried about is if someone is awarded or credited with a save by the Air Force Rescue Coordination Center, we can award them their certificate for life saving. And then qualification insignia. So the ES patch, the big patch that goes on your BDUs up on your shoulder, the Archer patch that you can wear on a flight suit, the CISM patch, CPR patch, the Incident Commander's badge, Observer Wings, Aircrew Wings, or Ground Team badge. Those are all qualification insignia that we would submit people for. And so we talked about this briefly. So for all those of the year awards, it's the significance and successes that have to do with ES and operations missions. It's based on their lifetime contributions. It should focus on recent participation and current benefits, but also discuss their history. Describing their accomplishments and contributions will be submitted through channels in narrative form. So you have to put together a whole letter justifying the award. And you want to include qualifications of participation, the impact on programs and missions, and the impact or at the regional wing level and on the national level, if applicable. And how do you get that information? Well, you got to track it. So we'll talk more about that. Here's the timeline. So a unit ES officer needs to submit these to the wing by January 15th. The wing will submit it by February 15th up to a region. The region will submit it by 15 March up to national. And then the National Review Board will get it to the National Commander by 15 April. These are the deadlines that are in the regulation. It may be different in your wing. Your wing, because of wing conferences, I know some of these dates change and your wing requires it earlier. So be aware of what's going on in your own wing. And final selection is made by the national commander for those of the year awards. And talk to your personnel officer, they'll help you. All right. So ES of the Year awards don't have a set package the way a Cadet of the Year award, some of the Aerospace of the Year awards already have a form and a set package. So things you might want to include: a one-page memo summarizing why this nominee deserves to be recognized. So we talk about their recent history and contributions and then their past. A memo of support from their supervisor or their higher headquarters counterpart. So for instance, if it's the squadron ES officer, a memo of support from their commander, or a memo of support from the group ES officer. Either of those would be appropriate. Up to 3 additional pages of documentation. Relevant media coverage of the nominee, if they're ever in the paper. I know I went to a SAR competition in Massachusetts one time when I was living in Alaska, and they wrote an article about me being there. Or mentioned me in an article about SAR competition, rather. Any special recognition received by the nominee or the nominee's unit for their performance. So if the unit gets a Unit of the Year award based on their ES program, you're going to want to include that information in the nominee's package. And what you really want to submit that nomination in a Word document or other editable document. And the reason for that is because as great as you are, someone up the food chain might have more information, might be able to wordsmith it a little better. So someone at the wing might be able to make it sound a little bit neater before it goes to region, things like that.
So there was a question about badges and patches. So you actually, in e-services and ops quals, you submit for approval for badges, like your ground team badge. Your screen's back now, boss. But where you actually get them is Vanguard. You go into Vanguard, and that's where you would purchase any of your uniform items, and the patches and various ES badges are all available through Vanguard. Just make sure that you have received the authorization to sew it on your uniform before you sew it on your uniform.
Yeah, don't be that guy.
Seen that a few times.
This is a grid of the ribbons and medals that we talked about that are related to ES. And the initial criteria is what you get, what someone has to meet in order to get awarded their first ribbon. All right, so that grid has those criteria. That clasp or subsequent award is what you need to do to get awarded it a second time or get a device on it. And that is typically similar, but it might be different. So for an air search and rescue medal or ribbon, it's 10 search and rescue sorties. To get a clasp, it's another 10. If you're an aircrew member, you get a prop device. And the details are in CapReg 39-3 for all of these. For a find ribbon, your first find, you get a ribbon, but then you don't get another one until your next actual distress find or 20 non-distress finds.
So basically, all of the criteria for different ribbons and patches are in the regulation, as he has noted here, CAP regulation 39-3. Obviously, everyone can go to e-services, or you don't even have to go into e-services. That's available on the public side, and pull the regulation up and review it to see the various requirements for different ribbons, different patches, things like that. It is a good idea to become pretty familiar with this. We're volunteers, so this is our payment. You're never going to get a paycheck if it's more than zero. Yeah. The biggest paycheck you'll get would be maybe a couple dollars that you put in your gas tank. So this is how we acknowledge our membership for doing the work that they do. It's amazing how far a simple certificate of appreciation can go to a member who's put in a lot of hours to help lay out one of your training plans. That they drove, put out a beacon, set up a simulated crash site. Just put in a lot of hours. They're not getting any training in it for themselves, but they are putting in a lot of hours towards getting something done. So give them something to show your appreciation. If you ever engage organizations outside of CAP, I highly, highly, highly recommend have a certificate of appreciation. A good example would be for ground team training, and you bring a K9 team in to do a demonstration. Have a certificate of appreciation for them to present to them right there after they finish their demonstration. That goes miles to building relationships.
You may not think a lot of it, but the gesture and having a physical takeaway is pretty meaningful. So here's the process for initiating those. So for most of these, it's CAP Form 2A, and you're going to fill out who the nominee is, what award you're nominating them for, and you're going to want to have either a participation letter showing that, hey, they did this thing and they got appropriate recognition, that they were on the mission or have done all these counter drug hours or whatever it is, or some sort of other documentation. You need to back it up. You can't just submit a form and call it good enough. That would be a justification for denying the award, and you don't want to do that. Be better than that. Another thing to point out is the disaster relief ribbon is different than the disaster relief with V device. Let me go back to the last slide. So the disaster relief with V is for participating on a presidentially declared disaster. So it is not the same award with the device. It is a different award. If someone is awarded the disaster relief ribbon, then also awarded disaster relief with V, they're wearing two of the same colored ribbons, one with a V device. And then life-saving is a different form. That's a Form 120. That has to be approved by the wing commander. Wing commander can designate these other awards down to group or unit commanders, but wing commander has to be the one to sign off on the save. And then finally, all of these have to be done within 2 years of the act, or they will be denied. Right? The reg is very clear about that. Here's what they look like if you're unfamiliar. So the air search and rescue, find, disaster relief, with Valor, bad on me. I was going to put a little V device on there, and I forgot to add the clip art. And then the life-saving award. So all these ribbons are what the ribbons look like, and then on your mess dress, here's what they will look like with medals. Homeland Security ribbon does not have a medal associated. And the Counter Drug Award, which on Vanguard, for some reason, it's called the Special Air Mission Award, is this ribbon as well. So those were the ES awards that we're responsible for as ES officers. So we should be keeping an eye on those. But if someone does something that we think is above and beyond those awards, or maybe like Z was saying, like a certificate of appreciation, or someone putting a ton of extra hours into getting ready for SAREX, they can be awarded something else that doesn't fall into those other criteria. And so think about these awards of valor for helping someone at your own peril. These distinguished, exceptional, and meritorious service awards for doing tremendously good work that impacts beyond your own unit. Commander's commendations, achievement awards, certificates of appreciation. Anyone can nominate someone for these awards. And like we said, this is the paycheck. Recognition is vital for retention. We want to make sure people know that they are valued, know that we see how hard they're working, and that we actually follow through and give them the awards.
And 10 times more harmful. So giving someone, recognition for doing something absolutely is the right thing to do, and it's what keeps people coming back. But 10 times worse than that is for someone to do something and for us to say nothing. And that's the easiest way to lose your folks and have them say, screw it. And all it takes is hey, thanks for doing that. Essentially what this paperwork is, right? It's a pat on the back and a thanks. That's If you can't do that minimal level, then people aren't going to want to come to your events or want to support you when you need it. So.
Yeah, this is Colonel Ray, the Oregon Wing Commander.
Yes, sir.
I've got a different kind of a perspective because I'm serving on the National Awards Committee, and as a wing commander, that as a smaller wing, we've got over 600 members, but it's really hard for me to watch what Colonel Boss is doing. So I need that extra little help to say, hey, sir, I've accomplished these tasks to earn this award, and I'm more than willing. I want to make sure that people are awarded, but you've got to help your commanders out a little bit, and to let them know that people have achieved certain levels that they need to be acknowledged and awarded these awards. Not only for yourself, if you set out and say, hey, I've done these things, it's not being arrogant, just letting your wing commander know that, hey, I've done these things. I'm eligible for this award. I have no problem with that, but it's just 600 members for me is for my wing. It's tough to keep an eye on what everybody's doing. So as a wing commander, I want to make sure everyone is acknowledged for the efforts and the things that they've done. So if it's the individual member or your supervisor, make sure that those things get acknowledged up to the higher headquarters, because we want to make sure that you're acknowledged for everything that you've done. And so that's the only thing I can say, other than I've had this discussion on the national awards between what's an of the year award and what's kind of a lifetime achievement award and things like that. I don't know if that'll ever get sorted out, but just please make sure that higher headquarters knows either you or a member, one of your subordinates have achieved these awards, and we'll make sure that those awards are given out.
Thank you, sir. It's great perspective from the top seat. So now I'm going to talk about qualification insignia. So things like observer wings, aircrew wings, the ES qualification badge for seniors, as well as for cadets, the ground team badge, incident commander's badge, and ES patch. Those are typically the qualification insignia that we are concerned with, and the way people earn them is typically by earning ratings. And so for the observer wings, aircrew wings, ground team badge, and incident commander badge, it's earning a rating. And for aircrew, the next levels, senior and master, aren't getting additional ratings. It is having a certain number of hours in that crew position and being qualified for a certain number of years. So it's really about being active as an observer or as an aircrew member. For ground team and incident commander, the senior and master badges correspond to additional ratings. So you get the ground team badge as a ground team member 3, you get the senior badge as a ground team leader or a ground team member 1, and you get the master badge as a ground branch director. And incident commander is IC3, IC2, and IC1 for those 3 badges. For the ES qualification badge, that's a professional development badge that you also track with ES awards in e-services. And so earning your technician rating gets your basic badge. Earning your senior rating gets your senior badge, and your master rating gets the master badge. So that's a pretty straightforward thing. Cadets, on the other hand, can earn the badge by completing the technician checklist in CAP pamphlet 70-3, but they can't earn the rating until they're a senior member. So that's just something to be mindful of, and we've talked about that a couple of times over the course of the workshop. Cadets can earn the badge by completing the same checklist, but can't be given the professional development rating. As an ES officer, in order to track these things, help your members keep a logbook. Track what missions they go on, what qualifications they get, what courses they take, so you can help them stay on top of this. And that's our job, is to coach and mentor people in the emergency services realm. So that's one of the things you can do. And another thing that we can do is prepare and hand off participation letters. What does that mean? So for example, I, as an inspector general, am not authorized to write participation letters. According to the reg, I have to be appointed on a participation letter as an assistant admin officer in order to sign a participation letter. So I hand my participation letters off for someone else to sign. And that way that documentation gets done, and then I pass them out to my participants. So that's what we can do. So as ES officers, if someone comes to a training weekend or goes on a mission, this list of people went on this mission on this date. It was this outcome, signed by the admin officer or the commander. All right, I'm on slide 27. So qualification insignia timeline. We don't need to wait. As soon as someone is qualified, we want to submit them for that award. And you do that by going into eServices, going to the Ops Quals utility, and going to the Ratings, Awards, and Badges page. And you can input it there. And just, it's a matter of clicking a box and getting it approved. So ways that can be done. You can wait for the member to do it, and then the commander will approve it. But if you input it and the commander approves it, the member just gets the recognition and the award, and they don't have to do extra work. That's the best staff work you can do. You can be the best ES officer you can be and support your program and motivate your members to stay involved by seeing when they complete these things, inputting their rating or their badge, and then having the commander approve it without them having to go in. You can also notify your personnel officer, ask them to input it, and have your commander approve it. But then you're adding people into the mix. You can ask your commander to just go in and do it. That's really you asking the commander to do your job, and that's not the best option. The best option is you doing it.
There was a question about, and I'd have to actually look this up myself. There apparently is a, how do you get the dog? Oh, I'm sorry.
The dog patch.
So there are the ES patch that you can sew on your ABU. There's two of them actually. One was the dog, and the other was the airplane. They're both the same award. But I'd have to go back and look. I believe once you've received a rating beyond ES, you're qualified to put that on your ABU.
Yeah, that was actually on my slide. I didn't speak to it, and I should have. So you can.
Sir, this is Lieutenant East here. I want to make sure it's understood with the new uniform reg that came out. The ES badge is no longer permitted for wear on the ABU, unfortunately.
Okay. Yeah, it can be worn on the BDU, the blue BDU. You can wear it on the flight suit as an additional patch, but not on the ABU. Since BDUs are going away, can cadets wear the ES patch on any uniform? No, Captain Mason, they cannot. Our uniform, our Air Force style uniforms are under the purview of the Air Force. We can't just do whatever we want with them. Everything we do has to be approved.
Yeah, that's not what I meant. I meant, is there any uniform left they can wear it on, or are we awarding them a patch that they can no longer wear after the 21 sundown of the BDUs? That was my question. I phrased it improperly.
They can wear it on the flight suit.
There's a blue BDU that use either like your ground team award patch and their aerospace badge, if I remember right. Am I right, cadets?
Cadets under 18 cannot wear the blue BDU. Again. So I completed General ES and a Flight Marshal training student. Once you've completed Flight Marshal, yes, Cadet Furches, you can. So you can let your ES officer know that you have completed the requirements for the patch, and then ask them to submit you for it.
I believe this is the last year for the BDU, if I remember correctly.
I think you're right. I'd have to look though.
BDUs phase out next June 2021.
Any other questions while we're waiting for me to catch up?
So I have one very brief question from
Yes, sir.
earlier. There was a training plan that you had a picture of earlier. Is there a template anywhere for a training plan?
Yes. Have you been to the Girdwood Squadron website?
Okay, it's on there.
The email. It's up there.
Thank you, sir.
Yep. So as we were saying, the ES patch, in order to get the patch, and there are no higher levels, it's generally yes, and one additional qualification: mission staff assistant, mission scanner, urban direction finding, ground team 3, mission radio operator, flight line marshaller, transport mission pilot, CERT, any other qualification on your 101 card. Things like ICS 300 and ICS 400 are not qualifications or classes. So don't get it twisted. All right. And here's what all the badges and wings and awards that we're talking about look like if you haven't seen them. Here are the observer wings, the aircrew wings, the ES qualification badge, the specialty track badge, ground team, incident commander, and those ES patches. Please note things like pilot, glider pilot, balloon pilot, solo, all those operations badges are not really in our purview as ES officers. So we concern ourselves with these because they're related to ES qualifications and training. The other ones we let the ops guys worry about. Make sense? Boy, all that just for those 2 slides. All right. So let's have the presenters turn their cameras back on because we're all done with slides. And there was a question about fast tracking, and I wanted to clarify on that. So if you earn a ground team rating, like ground team member 3, 2, or 1, that really describes how complex a mission you can go on as a ground team member. And I don't know if it's still in the new 70 series reg, or no, it's still 60-3 for ES. So I don't know if it's still in the 60-3, but it used to say that if you're a ground team member 3, you can go out up to a day. And if you're a ground team 1, you can go out for up to 72 hours on a multi-day wilderness sortie, wilderness mission. And a ground team leader qualified at any one of those 3 can lead those 3. So if you're ground team member level 3 with ground team leader, you can take your team out for a day. You've got the ground team member 3 qualifications to be out there, and you've got the leader qualifications to lead the team. So it's not fast tracking. By doing ground team member level 1 and ground team leader, you're the most qualified kind of ground team leader. Does that make sense?
Yeah, the other piece is if you look at the SQTR, let's say you are 18 years old or above, and you have your GTM 3, if you look at the SQTR for GTM 2 and 1, and then compare that to the GTL, you'll find everything that's in 2 and 1 is in the GTL. So you're not skipping any tasks. You still have to do all the work. It's just that you don't have, so normally you would have to do GTM 3, then you go 2, then you go 1, then you go GTL. And so it's, you could say it's kind of a fast track in going through the qualification piece, but all of the work is the same. You're still going to do all of the same map work. You're going to do all of the same. There's actually a handful of additional tasks in the GTL. If you add up everything from 3, 2, and 1, there's a few additional tasks that the ground team leader has to also accomplish, much, geared towards the leadership side of things.
Awesome. So feel free to unmute your mics if you want to ask a question or.
I have some questions. Our preparation before session 1, you had us submit a mess of questions to you, and I haven't seen any reference to the questions that people asked. Have they just gone into a black hole?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of busy work, and I just have people do things and don't do anything with it. So no, ma'am. There's an FAQ posted along with all the other training materials. Those are those questions.
I see. Okay. And the other question relating to the same document was the annual 2020 training and flying plan. I never found it. My commanding officer of the squadron never found it. So he would like to know where it is and how to get a hold of it.
Yeah, we can have the wing staff share it. It would be the DO, Colonel Bishop, would probably be the person to go to and ask for that.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. This is Lieutenant Blyleven, Oregon Wing.
Yes, ma'am.
So, if we're going to present an ES class during a unit meeting, where would be a good place to get the ideas or materials for class topics?
So that website that I shared earlier in the chat, nisa.cap.gov, National Emergency Services Academy.cap.gov, that has all of the formal presentation slides for ES training. So you can use any of those. If it's a topic that other people do, things like direction finding, you can go find a ham radio club's information and post that. YouTube videos are a great resource. There's lots of options out there, but probably the easiest thing to do is to go to the NISA website and use their slides.
Great, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Just be cautious because they haven't been updated in years and some of the references are wrong, so you're going to want to scrub that before you use those briefs.
I'm feeling attacked.
If only someone would do that.
Yeah. I was working with a team on updating some of that stuff, and it just fell apart. So I apologize.
Our ops team in Oregon Wing has started filing some courses in Teams under emergency services.
Yep. And so they'll have information and presentations you can use there as well. Sergeant Stolen Work asked, how do I get the ground team member badge? Yep, by earning a ground team member rating. How you do it? Can we kill the dog patch? No. That is heraldry that dates back to World War II. It's never going to die.
Remember, when you're doing squadron meetings, can be a challenge to get ES training done. It can be a very big challenge. There are some things that you can do. Some things are very difficult to do in a squadron meeting atmosphere. But remember the process, and this is a big piece for the ES officer to remember. There's the piece of the teaching. Okay, you can go and review all of those PowerPoint slides, but the student has to come back and demonstrate that they've retained some of that information, that they've retained and can answer the questions as they are presented in the task guide. That's the piece that has to happen. I can do PowerPoints over PowerPoints and PowerPoints, but if the students don't come back to an evaluator and say, hey, I want to review with you hot and cold weather injuries, and move off to the side and then literally go through the task guide and answer the questions in the task guide, then as the ES officer, you cannot sign off that task. You should challenge that. I can tell you, I have had this happen. Don't give an inch, because as soon as you do, everybody wants that inch and you're giving a mile. So as the ESL, I hate this term, but sometimes you end up being this. You end up being the ES police. It's a terrible term. I've lived there. I understand that its difficulties, but the regulation is there and it says this is what you have to do. And you will get emails and phone calls saying, well, we watched a dog run down the street and find this little kid. Doesn't that mean we're signed off for working with the canine? Well, no, that doesn't mean you're signed off for working with the canine. So that is a piece of the ES job that's not always pleasant. When you do get things, if you're assigned ES officer at the squadron, group, or wing level, and someone's rating comes up in your queue to be approved, and this is even for a skills evaluator, if you disapprove, if you click, you're not going to validate it, you do have to put verbiage in there as to why. So it's another good thing, to have good notes, to understand, people that you work with on training events, because I have had this as well, where we did a tabletop exercise and there were like 30 people there, and I got inundated with people wanting me to sign them off on various tasks, and I had to decline probably 3/4 of them because I wasn't the person that they evaluated tasks with. There was an air branch person, and there was a ground branch person, there was a PIO person. That was who they should have put in when they entered their tasks in e-services, but because everybody knows me, I set up this the tabletop. Everybody put my ID in there, and I was like, well, I'm not going to sign you off on, that you did these ground branch duties because you work with a ground branch skills evaluator, and that's the person who had to do that sign off. So, just be diligent. Hold people to the reg. The reg is a set of minimum requirements. Always remember that. If I do everything for GTM 3, 2, and 1, I'm not an expert. I do not do search and rescue as a paid job. So, and to my knowledge, there may be 1 or 2 people in CAP that do, but that'd be about it.
I did.
So, yeah, there's a key word. Don't do it anymore, right? So I hate to ramble on about this, but you just read 60-3, understand what it says. If you have questions, obviously, we're always here to answer questions. You have all the emails. They were in the PowerPoints. Feel free to reach out via email, and we'll do our best to answer your questions. But if your goal is I want to be an ES officer at the squadron, at a group, or at a wing level, hold everybody to the same standard. Make them meet that standard.
Thanks, sir.
I have a question there, Colonel Bose.
Yes, sir.
So once we take the exam, I guess it'll just be submitted, or to take the test or the quiz, it'll just be submitted to you, and that's pretty much it.
And that is exactly it. So after the 27th, when the quiz closes, I will write up the participation letter and send it out to everybody who finished the quiz, because I won't really know who did all the things until I get all those quizzes back. And so it'll be another week, and then I'll send out the participation letter. And yeah. And again, this doesn't get you any specific credit for any qualifications, for your specialty track, for anything like that. But you are going to get a participation letter showing that you were here and part of it.
Good, sir. And I just want to thank you just for that, Colonel Bose and Major Frank DeBose and Major Zabe. A very good putting this presentation together, giving us some, orientation on the ES services through CAP. I really appreciate you guys taking the time to do this.
Well, happy to do it. And, we saw the need and we wanted to help. So,
Sir, just on that note, for the BDUs, they phase them out June 15 next year. My suggestion is Tech Sergeant up here in New York State is start getting your gear together, cadets, because it's changing, and it's going to change for the good, I think.
Yeah, thanks for that.
There is a question that pops up here. How are you managing all the training? How can they skills evaluate, make sure the personnel know their skills? So we are in a unique situation right now. Different states have different procedures, policies, recommendations for the state reopening. Some states are at different. All states are at different levels. So a lot of this is common sense. Some things are practical tasks that you have to see someone do. I have to see someone do a navigation course. I can't just say they answered some questions on a test online and now they can be signed off on land navigation. You can still do that and maintain the social distancing and wearing the mask and things like that. That can still be done. There's no law that says that a group of less than 10 and maintaining the social distancing and maintaining you're washing your hands and all that kind of stuff to do some of these practical tasks. What you have to be careful of, now your wing, actually through the end of June, the national commander had canceled all national activities, and wings are now starting to reopen for squadron meetings. So things are starting to open back up, and the practical tasks are, you will again be able to start actually doing the practical tasks in person. Now, this applies also to aircraft. I know a lot of the different wings are looking at how to put 3 people in an aircraft. It's very confined and tight space. So it, for at least the short term, maybe it's only 2 people in the aircraft, and doing temperature checks before anybody gets in the aircraft. So there's going to be learnings here. This is new to everybody. So it's not, we're all in a unique situation. I know here in Maryland, that's what they're working on. They're trying to figure out what device are they going to use to make sure they have something common to take people's temperatures, to keeping everybody wearing masks, doing the social distancing, and things like that. I hope that answered your question. I think that's what you were getting to.
And another component is they suspended, or rather gave a grace period for qualifications that were due to expire, because the expectation is that we're not going to be able to do training while this is going on. And so we're not going to get new people trained, and we're not going to be able to requalify people who are expiring. So yeah, this is the world we live in now. It's the after times.
That said, yes, the practical tasks are difficult, if not impossible right now, but there are a lot of tasks that, the same kind of tasks that you would look into teaching at a meeting night, which I'm with Major Zavatakis. I'm generally very resistant to that, and I get a lot of flack for it because people want to train, but the resources that it requires to train 1 or 2 people at a meeting is prohibitive to the rest of the squadron, right? But anyway, there's a lot of that knowledge, hot and cold weather stuff. Like a lot of that stuff you're quizzing a person, and there's no reason why you can't quiz someone. I guess they could have the reg open on the other side of the webcam or something, but there's probably ways that you can accomplish and document some of the training that we do, either by virtual means or some other way. Yes, you can't do all of it for sure, but there's ways around it. So, as much as this situation is frustrating a lot of the times, I'm excited, both in CAP and just in the real world, at all of the new things all of the ways we've learned to do things in right now that we can hopefully use to help, because some of this stuff helps us get that training out to people who don't have it available locally. So hopefully we can retain some of this stuff in the future, and get something out of it now that we've learned how to do it.
Yeah. Once again, thank you everyone very much. And for those of you who are watching this video afterwards, for your time, your attention, your dedication to CAP. I really appreciate everything that you guys do, and we're happy that we were able to provide a little bit of training for you. If you have any questions, the Girdwood Squadron website has all of our emails up. You can reach out with anything else that you need, or reply to any of the previous emails I sent. And the final quiz should be open shortly, if it's not already, within the next few minutes. And it's very brief. It's just to verify that you participated in all 3 videos or watched them afterwards, and a little bit of review about what we covered, and then your feedback about what you thought of the workshop overall. So once we have what's that, sir?
A link to that?
It's on the Girdwood Squadron website. It's the same place you've been going for all the other materials. If you don't have that, I can send it out again.
Thank you.
Do you have that?
I have the link of the session 1 and session 2 with all the other supporting material. So,
yep, it's on that same page.
Okay, thank you.
All right, awesome. Hey, Girl Lane Street.
Yeah.
All right, I guess I'm getting the play me off music. All right, so thanks very much, everyone, and we'll talk to you later.